Let's continue the conversation. Our next guest says innovation and technology is key to bringing back manufacturing jobs to North America and Europe. Can this be the answer, therefore, to the economic recovery? We're joined by Hal Ravichet, the president of the Stevens Institute of Technology. Good evening.
Good evening.
It was interesting. I was reading some of the things that you've written in the past talking about the idea that innovation is now absolutely essential. I sort of wonder whether or not governments see it this way as well. We saw yesterday the British government coming out and effectively stomping on entrepreneurs with a 50% rate of tax, and we've seen similar things around the world. Do you think conditions are right for innovation to blossom?
No, they're not. And the stimulus package in the U.S. and perhaps in the U.K. is like filling lots of glasses of water without filling the reservoir. So it's short-term, focused on the service economy, in this case banking, and we're not focusing on innovation, entrepreneurs for the high-tech industries. It's a great mistake. So in the U.S., starting 20 years ago, we bought the argument that the service sector would save the economy. We shrank from almost 30% of the GDP manufacturing to 12.4%. None of the stimulus package investments really are a strategy for rebuilding manufacturing production, not commodity products, but the high-tech, and that's a major mistake.
It was interesting. Earlier on the show, we were discussing Germany, a country that is heavily based on manufacturing, yes, and therefore is experiencing one of the worst downturns of any country in the Western world at the moment. And the reason is because it has that exposure, because it's overly focused on manufacturing.
I'm not sure that's the case.
Well, it is. The GDP numbers are going to be 6-7%
maybe there are other
down
factors,
this year.
right? Other factors. Maybe Germany's social programs have cost them too much. Maybe they moved away from innovation.
They're pretty innovative, but the problem is that they're highly innovative. The problem is,
are their products as innovative as they were 10 or 20 years ago? We have to evaluate that carefully. I'm not so sure Germany's problems is due to the loss of manufacturing, but really the social cost of its programs.
Richard, will you agree with that?
I think there's elements of both there. I mean, clearly, the German economy works a different way. There is greater government intervention, there's greater control over the economy, and it has not been, I think, a generalisation was put to me about 10 years ago, and it might really now be out of date, but it's that Germany had a really efficient economy for the 1970s, and it's not moved on since then. Now, I think that is, people accuse me of saying it's a slur on the German nation. That's probably true, because you can point to things which have clearly changed. But I do think it's rooted in an industrial structure which is different. It's less dynamic than we see elsewhere in the world. And I think that's as much a political choice as
it's more of the
else.
Social capitalism, right? Singapore is controlled capitalism. What I'm calling for is enlightened capitalism. So the policies of government have to create the setting, the environment for innovators and entrepreneurs to thrive. We haven't done that in the United States. We would have caught AIG if we enforced our antitrust laws. We didn't. You know, Microsoft, Bill Gates is a hero. Well, is he? Or a villain? The new companies in software grabs them up. We need to have all these companies grow, all these little small companies grow. Over 60% of the new jobs in the United States are small companies. The big companies outsource. We have to get away from that.
But you're talking about a root and branch change in all dimensions of the economy if you're going to attack the issues that you're just raising, antitrust and everything else like that. The old-fashioned way, you have to admit, still has some success. I point to the industrial slowdown of the late 80s and then the recession in the early 1990s. We were talking about cataclysmic growth rates for the U.S. economy. That transitioned away, and people who were riveting bolts for GM in Detroit were selling cell phones in Cleveland within a couple of years. And the high-tech industry had a tremendous boom in the latter part of the decade off of some very old-fashioned stimulus, which the current administration is effectively echoing.
But Martin, I agree with you, but times have changed. In the U.S., since then, we have the conditions for a perfect storm, right? Sarbanes-Oxley, it's killing us. Excessive product liability litigation. The United States is growing with lawyers, not with innovators and entrepreneurs. So all these factors come together. We failed to enforce antitrust, as I'm saying, right? How do we reward innovators in the United States? Now we're talking about taxing the carried interest for venture capitalists. It doesn't make sense.
Hal, I've got 10 seconds left on the show. Just sort of give us your sense of whether or not this is actually going to happen. It's a great idea. It sounds extremely interesting. Can you see policymakers putting it into practice?
No, we need leaders to make it happen. That's what the world needs.
Let's hope President Obama's listening. Let's hope Mr. Brown is listening. Let's hope Mr. Sarkozy is listening. Hopefully Angela Merkel is listening as well. Hal Ravichet joining us from the Stevens Institute of Technology. Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for spending the hour with us. Useful insights.